Hello, Space Apps crew. My name is Matt Scott, and I am the Global Community Manager and Storyteller for NASA's International Space Apps Challenge, welcoming you to our Ask an Ambassador Q&A, a time when you, as Space Apps community members and participants, could ask questions to a couple of our Space Apps ambassadors. For those who aren't aware, ambassadors are dedicated community members, volunteers who have been supporting you in Space Apps chat throughout the weekend alongside our subject matter experts. So they'll be sharing more about their experiences as we get started. And so today we have Alex, we have Katelyn, and we have Tyler, our Universal Event Lead, who will join us. Before we get started, I want to mention just that we have a number of resources online at spaceappschallenge.org/resources, where you could find a number of guides, including our project submission guide. I know that a number of people have finished submitting their projects and some have hit the deadline, the 11:59 p.m. local time deadline. And so that's a great resource for any of the questions that you have as that deadline approaches. One clarification I'll make before we welcome on Tyler, Katelyn, and Alex is that, again, the deadline is 11:59 p.m. local time. And so that is the deadline for your team. That time is determined by the location of where your team is registered. If you are part of the Universal event, you will submit your project deadline in accordance with the latest time zone represented on your team. So we're happy to answer those questions, answer other questions as we go along. But right now I'm going to welcome on our guests. So Alex, welcome. Katelyn, welcome. And Tyler, welcome. It's good to have you here. And as we get started, you just introduce yourselves, beginning with Tyler and then continuing with Alex and then Katelyn.
Yes, hello everyone. Hello Space Apps participants. It's good to see all of you here, and I'm glad that you all decided to come visit this live stream. It's been a pleasure working with all of you this past weekend, and I hope that you're all working hard to finish at the finish line. So as Matt said, I'm Tyler. I'm the Universal Event Lead. And this is actually my first Space App, so I don't have a ton of experience here, but I'm very excited to continue working with all of you.
Yeah, and I guess I'll go next. I'm Katelyn. I am an ambassador for the Space Apps Challenge. This is my 5th year participating. I am a data science by day and a hacker by night. I love everything Space Apps, everything NASA. I'm so excited to be here again this year, and I'm really looking forward to answering your questions. We have a few that we know we're going to answer, but we've got our eye on the chat, so if you've got any questions, be sure to ask them here.
Hi, everyone. I'm Alex. I'm a Space Apps ambassador and a NASA DataNet. As a systems analyst, I support the Go team and Space Apps Challenge, helping participants based on my experience, in datasets, APIs, and IT subjects. I participated in some previous hackathons, and I create some tools for the community as a member, such as the Research Telescope and the recent Mural of Positions. I have a blog too, related to my work on the NASA programs, with stories and a complete list of my contribution.
Great. Thank you all for introducing yourselves. And Katelyn, you did this, but just as a reminder for anyone who's watching, please feel free to put your questions for our ambassadors in the chat. wherever you're watching, whether that's on YouTube, on Twitter, on Facebook, and we'll definitely touch on some of those questions as we go along. But before I hand it off to the team to really start to dive into questions, I just wanted to see if Alex and Katelyn, you could talk more about your experience with space apps and with NASA data in particular.
Sure, I'll let Alex go first this time.
About my experience, yes, I participated some previous hackathons, and I had a global nominee project in 2019, and I'm glad to participate in this group. I think for me is great to participate as an ambassador this year.
Amazing. And then Katelyn, I know before you introduced yourself, it's a really interesting story because I met you at one of my first Space Apps events in 2016, Space Apps Brooklyn. But could you talk more about your Space Apps experience?
Yeah, of course. So yeah, that was my first year too in 2016 in Brooklyn. I was someone who had no tech experience, and here I am now, the head of data science at a company. But I have to say that Space Apps gave me my start. It gave me the confidence to, enter the tech world and really get started. And 5 years later, here I am. But I got started as a participant in 2016. My project moved on to global judging, winning our category, and then moving on to final judging. We didn't win that year, but we came close, and that was just enough to get me hooked on Space Apps. So I've participated every year since. Last year, we were a local lead winner. But this year, I decided I've got so much experience with the NASA data sets and some of our offers and sponsors. It just definitely made sense to kind of help out in this way this year. And so when Matt asked me, the answer was obviously yes.
Awesome. Cool stuff. And I will really hand over the floor to you all, to Tyler, as you begin to cover questions. But one more reminder for participants who are watching to continue to post questions in the live chat. And as we continue along, I'll be popping in mostly to ask some of those questions. But definitely take it away, Katelyn, Tyler, and Alex.
Yeah, so thanks, Matt. Like Matt said, proceed with asking questions as you see fit. But we do have a few questions that we'd like to address that we've seen pop up a few times that we think would be helpful for you guys to know, especially for those of you on other sides of the planet who are getting near to your submission. So without further ado, Katelyn, if you don't mind sharing your screen, that would be great.
Let's see, which screen do we want to share first?
Well, let's look at our questions here. So
okay, I mean, they're not totally all the way done, so I'll just read from them. So let's say right now we know that NASA data.nasa.gov is down. So what alternatives can I use? So we are very aware right now that we're having trouble with our data site. And we're not confident that it's going to be up before the end of the hackathon. However, you will not be penalized for not being able to use a NASA data set. We do have our offers page, which has, I'll share my screen in a moment, but there are tons of offers that you can take advantage of to help with your project, as well as you don't have to just use NASA data. You can use ESA, JAXA, CNES, or any other reliable data set. So when the judges are going to be taking a look at your page, they're just going to want to see data sets that are reliable, not from some kind of unvalidated website, but from a source that we know is true. So there are definitely alternatives out there. If you have very specific questions to your challenge where you can find data, I would encourage you to look in your Rocket Chat channel for that challenge. the subject matter experts in there should know some alternatives for you guys.
Yes, great. Fantastic answer, Katelyn. Another question that we've been receiving quite a bit has been, when is the deadline to submit our projects? That's a great question. So basically, the deadline to submit your projects corresponds with your time zone for local events. So let's say that you're in London and it's 11:59 p.m. on October 4th. That's when you're going to submit. If you're participating in the universal event, however, the deadline to submit will correspond to the latest time zone of a group member in your team. So if you are in London and you have some other members in India and then one person in America, the latest time zone, the American time zone, will be the time zone that you follow to submit your project.
Yeah, and actually, I just see a question in the chat that kind of goes along with this, so maybe we should answer that one. But the question is, what happens if after the deadline submission, we keep updating our GitHub repository to help develop their software? So that's one of the questions that I've seen a lot. Like, are we able to continue working on our project post-hackathon? And the answer is yes, please do. The best part about Space Apps is that it doesn't just end on Sunday. You guys can work on this project for months, days, years to come. And that's actually what I've done. My hackathon project started 2.5 years ago, and we've continued to work on it. We're sponsored now. We work with NASA experts, and this all started at Space Apps. So you definitely can keep adding to your page. However, what you're judged on is what's on the project page. So what you completed in the 48 hours is what you are judged on. So feel free to continue to add to your code bases. Feel free to work on your project, but know that the project page is what you're going to be judged on.
Great answer, Katelyn. Great answer. See some other questions popping up too, but might pivot to another frequently asked question that we have, and that is, what does the judging process look like? So obviously we're nearing submission time for a lot of different locations. So I know that people are probably anxious about how their project will be judged and so on and so forth. So basically there are two different judging structures. The first is that for the local events, basically you'll be able to submit your project and the locations will have a panel of local judges that screen all the projects from that particular location. And then there will be 2 projects that move on to global judging. For the universal event, however, there will basically just be a team of about 30 subject matter experts that are analyzing all the submissions from the universal event, and the SMEs will decide which projects proceed to global judging.
Yeah, and just to answer another question in the chat, there is one, we've gotten this a lot, so I've seen a couple in the chat now with unresponsive team members. So you guys might be just hacking away and working on your project, and you've depended on someone else that you've added to your team, and they're no longer responsive. Unfortunately, sometimes this happens, and the formal way to deal with this is if you're absolutely sure that you no longer need or want this person on your team, there's no way to actually remove them from your team. The best option would be to start a new team and just not include that person. So unfortunately, there's no way that person would need to, of their own volition, leave your team. So if that's not an option, then the best course of action would be to start a new team.
Yes. So you might run into an issue where there's one person in your team who, for some reason, is not responsive or doesn't work. But yeah, like Katelyn said, you cannot actually remove them. They would have to leave on their own accord. So that's a question that we've been seeing quite a bit over the last few days. Let's see.
Yeah, and just to we are looking at the questions, but maybe we can return to the ones that we have, but how can I take advantage of the offers given throughout the hackathon? And this is where I will actually share my screen so that you guys can see. Let me see, share. Yep, sorry guys, give me 1 second. All right, that should work. Can you guys see my screen? Oh, yeah. Can you see it now? I don't know. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes, we can see your screen. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Okay, so these are our offers. Tyler, do you want to talk about some of these first ones, and I can talk about some of the other ones?
Yeah, so I see that we have a lot of global offers actually. So quite a few of the ones that I've been seeing a lot of people using are the Google one and the IBM one for cloud access. And then there are a few others actually that I would like to highlight. If you could scroll down just a little bit. Microsoft and Miro. So those are the ones I've been hearing a lot about in the chats. So I encourage you guys to take advantage of these offers if you have time left before you submit. So yeah, and then I think also Katelyn knows quite a bit about Meteomatics. So Katelyn, if you have anything to say about that, go ahead.
Yeah, so Meteomatics is a really cool, product. They have a weather API that covers all different types of weather conditions all over the world, all the way back to 1979. As you can imagine, this could be applicable to many different types of projects, whether you need moisture, humidity, wind, ocean temperature, anything. Meteomatics has metrics on all of those things. I've partnered with Meteomatics personally for my own projects. They are a great group of people. I know that they have some people this weekend just there to answer questions. So if anyone has any questions specifically about Meteomatics, feel free to reach out to me on Rocket Chat. It's just, my name is just Katelyn_Hertel, but I could talk about them all day.
Awesome. And I would just add, jumping in to say, we have so many great collaborator offers that are available on the site. If you visit the collaborators page on your dashboard, and you could see Amazon, GoDaddy, Google, IBM, Meteomatics, Microsoft. Thank you for scrolling, Katelyn. Miro and Tableau. And so definitely check those out if you haven't already, because all of the information about the deadlines and offer details is right there on the page.
And I think important thing is in the chat. We have a particular room. Ask a global collaborator with some collaborators for these companies. I think is a good place to ask specific questions.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, to continue with that thread again, the collaborators are available in the chat, and I've seen a lot of different back and forth between the collaborators and the participants, which is helpful, especially as you get closer to submitting and finalizing your project. Katelyn?
Yeah, I was just going to answer a question from the chat that says, can you explain to me exactly how it happens to host Universal Hackathon event and what it means to be a local lead? So I'll definitely let Tyler talk about the Universal event, but as I'm also a local lead. I have been for a couple of years. So just to explain the difference between the two. So as a local lead, I am one of the local leads for New York City. And in New York, we plan the local event. So normally without, COVID and coronavirus, we would have had an in-person event. And so we have all over the world local leads that are in charge of those individual locations. And then in terms of judging for the local events, you know, each local event has the criteria they're looking for in terms of whether you need a 5-minute video or maybe a longer presentation. And then from each local event, we have two teams that move on to our global judging. But it does work a little bit differently in our universal event. And the universal event is if you don't fit into any of the specific local events. And so I will turn it over to Tyler to explain a little bit more about the universal event and how it differs from local lead events.
Yeah, thanks, Katelyn. So in years past, actually, NASA Space Apps has had, obviously, all events were physical locations without COVID, obviously. So this year, every event is now virtual, although last year the universal event was referred to as the virtual event. This year it's called the universal event, and that's basically to signify that participants can participate despite not having a specific location. This year we're very proud to acknowledge the fact that we have over 250 locations for the Space Apps event this year, and then plus one for the universal event, obviously. So universal event participants are basically the ones who don't have a local event near them. So they all join together all over the world, and they can collaborate with people from as far west as the US and as far east as China. So the universal event is basically just an amalgamation of all the leftover NASA Space Apps Hackathon event participants.
Awesome. And just building on all of this, it's been really great to dive in. I'm glad that we're starting to dive into the chats. Just one question that I want to address, you know, what can participants gain from visiting Space Apps chat? And we've talked about that a lot as we've mentioned Space Apps chat a lot as we've gone along, but I just want to underscore the benefits of visiting Space Apps chat. So one of the things is that you have access to all of us. We're all very active in Space Apps chat, and we'll be there if you have questions, if you want to post in some of the channels there. And if you're not familiar with Space Apps chat, it's easy to log in. If you're logged into your Space Apps account, you could just go to chat.spaceappschallenge.org, and there are a number of channels on the chat. So there are channels for the different challenges available. There's the Ask a Global Collaborator channel, which you could find if you click on the little globe button at the top of the chat. And there are also channels for individual locations, channels for different languages. And if you're part of the universal event, there's a Find a Team channel, which I'm guessing a lot of people aren't still looking for, but also a general forum for people to connect and communicate with one another. And I'm just looking at the chat to see if there's anything I want to prompt you all with as we continue. But if there are other questions that you have, Tyler, Katelyn, Alex, feel free to start to dive into those.
Well, one thing I do want to highlight is just as you mentioned, all of us are in the chats. You know, we all play different roles in those chats. So the Go team is there to kind of steer us and answer some of those general questions. You've also got ambassadors in there like myself and Alex, who specialize in the NASA data and, you know, navigating through the NASA data and finding what you need to find. But the other thing is we also have subject matter experts in our challenge channels, and they're there because they know the challenge. They've worked on the challenge, they've studied the challenge, and it's really beneficial to have conversations with those people. It might make the difference in your project. And one of the other things that I personally have been doing is offering 15-minute review sessions. I do have a couple left. I can try to post the link in the chat. I'll send that to one of our Go team members so they can look. I do have some sessions open tonight. But those are the kinds of things that if you're not in Rocket Chat, you are missing out on. So really be sure to sign in and take a look at what's going on in those channels. No question is silly. No question is dumb. Ask us anything. That's what we're here for.
Awesome.
And then I did want to, if it's okay with everyone else, I did want to go into project submission and the actual project page. I definitely, in my sessions, there are a couple of tips that I like to give everyone. But the things that you want to make sure is that you're listing your data sources. That's really, really important. And not only just listing your data sources, but sometimes just a very short sentence. This is what we learned from the data. This is how we used it. That way, when judges are going through your project page, they understand how you were able to use the data and how it affected your project. The other thing that I like to say that you should try to do in your project page somewhere is we understand that you only had 48 hours for this challenge, and you might not reach the MVP of your project in just 48 hours. So we really want to encourage you to maybe write a very short paragraph on, if you had unlimited time and unlimited resources, what could this project look like, and what's your vision for this product? So just including a couple of sentences about, your vision for this, along with what you were able to accomplish in 48 hours, is really effective, and I think the judges really appreciate that. And then I guess, Tyler, should I share my screen and go over the project page?
If you feel that it could be worth it, I think it could be definitely worth it.
Okay, let me share my screen again. It was a little complicated last time. If you could just let me know when it's sharing, that would be great. Oh yeah, this one.
We can see it now. Yep.
Okay, so as you can see, this is my demonstration page. I've got "The world is on fire and it's fine" as my picture. Okay, so we have the mandatory fields, which have the red asterisk next to them. And I think everything on this page actually is mandatory. But so obviously your project title, a high-level summary of your project. So this is like, imagine you only have a tweet to tell your story of your project. You want to give us just a very high-level overview very quickly, and you'll get into the specifics later on. Describing what your project, how it addresses the challenge. This is really important. I think judges really want to know that you didn't just create a project out of the blue, you answered the prompt that we gave you. So be sure to spend, pay special attention to this section here. And then how you developed your project. So this is a place I like to tell people, don't just tell us, all of the steps you took, but we also want to hear about some of the challenges you faced and the hurdles that you had to overcome. And it's only 48 hours. Of course you ran into problems. So explaining how you overcame those problems is something that can be really impressive to judges. And it shows that you guys, thought about your problem and you came up with a solution. This is where you can list your data sources, as I mentioned before. So space agency data, now please remember that you're not going to be penalized for not being able to get onto data.nasa.gov. As we know, it's down currently. But we do have the CSA, CNES, JAXA. We've got all of those different agencies on there, as well as if you check in your challenge page with your subject matter expert, they should have some extra resources for you. Then moving on to the demo of your solution, this could be a link, or this can be up to 7 slides or a 30-second video. So I would recommend, definitely utilizing one of those, but we want to see your project working in the best way that it can after 48 hours. So whether or not that's just a mock-up of an app or you do have a working app, we want to see that here. And then sharing your code is not mandatory, but it does help to give us give the judges a better idea of how you came up with your solution. And then again, you can list your data here. And then also, if you'd like to add some hashtags to categorize your project, you can add that here. But once you're ready to submit your project, you would definitely click this here and submit. And once you hit submit, it is a public page. So anyone can see what you have. You'll still be able to edit it up until 11:59 local time. But once you do submit, it is public. So that was a lot of talking, so I'm going to stop for a second.
Yeah, thanks, Katelyn. I appreciate you doing that.
Yeah, and I'll even jump in to say, like, start early, start working with your project page early, because anything could come up last minute. You might realize that you want to add other information, and so definitely start now if you haven't started already, regardless of how much time you have left. I just wanted to look over to you, Alex, to see if there's any advice you have for project submission and just what people should include as they and what people should consider as they finalize their projects. I think we should be able to hear you.
Sorry, what's the question?
What advice do you have for people as they finalize their projects?
The main activity, I think, is you try to fill the fields and try to explain, because the judge sometimes is so difficult to understand your ideas. And I think you need to explain shortly but clearly, because the judging process is so hard when you don't explain your project clearly.
Yeah, and I'll just add, I think and I don't know if you were going to go into this, Kate. Maybe before I go into more clarifications about project submission, you could go ahead and just respond.
Oh, I was just going to say, be excited, guys. This is a project that you made in 48 hours. That's like unheard of. I mean, who does that? Be really proud of your project, show off. Like, this isn't a time to hold back and be modest. I want to see you guys bragging about what you were able to accomplish in 48 hours, because only the other Space Apps participants are able to say that they did this. You can tell everyone that you did this in 48 hours. So in your project submission, show the judges that you're proud of what you created, and blast it on social media. You show it on your Facebook. I am proud of everyone that I've seen so far. The teams that I've met with have blown me away. But it's really good in your project submission to show that you do have confidence in what you created. You believe in your solution, and you think that it could really change the world for the better. Being enthusiastic like that can make all the difference.
Absolutely. And I think the other thing that I just want to add is that with both of you, something that came up in your responses, Alex and Katelyn, is the idea of telling a story with your project page. And I heard from one of our recent winners. We've heard from many of them through short video clips that have been shared on social media and in our opening ceremony. But one of them was really just talking about and reflecting about how the story that he told and that his team told was just so critical. And so to communicate that excitement and to communicate just why what you're creating is awesome is something that's so critical. And the other piece I want to add, which isn't as fun, but something that's really important to know, is just when it comes to the project page, a good reason to start early is that there are certain technical technical guidelines that you need to go by. So our platform does allow you to upload images, but it doesn't allow you to directly upload videos or documents. And so when you want to add in your 30-second video, for instance, or your up to 7 slides in your submission, you should use a platform like YouTube, Google Drive, OneDrive, or Dropbox, and just make sure that that there is public access to view those things, so that our judges could see all of the things that you've added to your page as they review them and start to review.
I just have one thing to add to that. If for your attachments, if you do choose to do the attachments, one thing that I would suggest is don't just attach a graph that doesn't really have any context. When a judge is looking at the attachment, they want to make sure they know what they're looking at. So what I've been suggesting is editing just a little sentence or a small paragraph into the image so that they know what they're looking at, and there's a little bit of context. That'll help the judges better understand your attachments and how they relate to your project.
Yes, and one quick point about project submission as well. You can submit your project repeatedly until the deadline. So let's say you submitted at 10, you realize you made a mistake on something, 11 o'clock, you can resubmit until 11:59. So feel free to do that.
Yeah, and I want to pull up this question that is from one of our many questions from chat, because there are a lot that have been coming up. So someone asked, what are the advantages of becoming a winner of Space Apps and of this hackathon?
I was literally about to highlight that question. I can definitely answer this one. So one of my dreams as a participant was always to be able to pitch to NASA itself. I mean, can you imagine? Our top 6 finalists will get the opportunity to present their project to NASA and some of our other space agency representatives, as well as a trip. Once the pandemic is over and it's safe to travel again, the winning teams will be able to see, a space launch down at NASA headquarters, live in person, with really great viewing seats. It's really a spectacular experience. I've seen other teams go through it, but really, another benefit to winning is just getting your names out there, getting your product out there, your project out there, and things really start to take off if you end up being one of the winners. But I do want to highlight that you don't have to be a winner for things to take off for you and your team. There are ways for you to create your own team page on Twitter or on Facebook and advertise what you're working on. Search for different scientists on Twitter that specialize in your topic of choice, and see if you can engage them. That's what I was able to do. My project had to do with climate change. I engaged with several climate change scientists who do that for a living, and we were able to make our project even better after the hackathon through that. So there are connections out there to be made. As long as you have the confidence and the motivation, you can make those connections and get your project to be something spectacular.
Yeah, and I'll just show a follow-up question here, that if a global winner is selected from other countries, how can they come and attend what you were mentioning, like the launch, for instance, Katelyn, when it's safe, when travel is safe again. So we have winners from all over the globe every year for Space Apps. And one thing I'd clarify is that, so we have those 6 global winners, and they are invited to attend that launch at a NASA center. And so while that's still one of the prizes, one of the awards, I should say, one thing that I would just want to note is that the winners are responsible for their own fundraising and getting people on board just to fund their travel to that trip. There will be a lot of time for the winners of Space Apps 2020 to do that. And there's always a lot of excitement around the events locally, especially if it is a winner that's coming from another country. I could think of countless countries where there's a lot of excitement about space apps. And so that's one thing that makes it a little bit easier to get those resources in place to take that trip and to see that launch, as Katelyn was saying.
Yeah, and then I just have another thing to mention. You know, something that I've heard, but I haven't seen asked too much is there any kind of like alumni association for like Space Apps participants that have done this in the past? And the formal answer is there's not like a community in which you can interact with, but that's a good idea, and maybe we should look into that. But there are ways for you to continue to stay involved. You can engage in social media. Definitely, I mean, Space Apps is posting year round, not just during the hackathon. So there's ways to boost the messages during our off seasons too. The other ways for you to get involved is to become a local lead. If you don't live near a major city, then maybe being a local lead just where you are and attracting some people in your area, that's a great way to get involved. And then you could also be a local judge or a local mentor for your local event. So these are different ways how you can remain involved in Space Apps, but in terms of like an actual community, maybe that's something that we actually want to invest in and look into.
Yeah, and one thing I would mention too, to build on that, is that a lot of times there are more local communities that exist, or more local, maybe informal alumni networks that exist. So I know that a number of local leads, depending on their events, might have, for instance, a Discord channel or a Slack channel. And if you're part of the Universal event, while you won't necessarily have access to those local things that local leads are organizing, if an event does pop up where you are, or if there's an event near you, I would definitely encourage you to look up that event and follow them on social media and see how they're engaging participants when Space Apps isn't happening. The other piece is that on social media, there are so many great people, great community members who you could follow. So I know that I personally follow a lot of community members. That's one way that I've been able to stay up to date with, for instance, Katelyn's work, and to see that she's still engaged in the community. And so we would absolutely encourage you just to try to stay in touch with people and follow along as much as possible. But actually, speaking of which, there was a question that came up that was more, well, actually, there have been a lot of thoughts to this point. A lot of people are excited about NASA, as you could imagine. I know that you've talked about this a little bit, but I would just love to hear from you all, why, Alex and Katelyn, you've decided to stay involved with Space Apps over the many years so far.
Yeah, Alex, do you want to go first with that one?
Oh, you're on mute, Alex.
Okay. I'm a data nut for 3 years, and I love challenge and open data. And for me, I found a volunteer position, and I found this opportunity in NASA programs. And yeah, I chose this opportunity because I think it is a merge between IT subjects and data science.
Yeah, and the reason that I continue to stay involved is because I'm so excited by NASA. As a child, I always wanted to be an astronaut, and as an adult, I'm realizing I'll never be in shape enough to be an astronaut. So the next best alternative is to work alongside NASA and get involved with their events like this. And so that's what really motivates me is, you know, I might not be an astronaut like I thought I would be, but I am working with NASA data. I'm learning every day, and there's just so much at our fingertips. It's really unlimited, and the learning just continues and continues. And every year I'm learning more, so that's why I keep coming back each year.
Yeah, and in that same vein, Katelyn, you know, as regards to with judging, of course, if you are a global or executive finalist, you'll be able to basically interact with judges as they review your projects. So in that same vein, like I said, there's more than just local judging for the universal event and the local events. Basically, after your project has gone through the ranks, you'll get to executive judging, where NASA and other space agency experts will review your projects and basically figure out the top teams. And finalists will be announced in December, and winners will be announced in about January 2021. So just because you're not able to be an astronaut doesn't mean you can't necessarily have a profound impact in the world of NASA. So keep that in mind and stay strong and happy hacking.
Yeah, definitely. One last thing, I think we might be reaching our end of our questions, but I do want to shamelessly plug my Twitter because I love answering questions on there. It's at caters_potatoes. Yes, that is my Twitter name. But I love answering questions on there. So please follow me on there. I'll follow you back. Any questions you have, you can DM me or tweet at me. I'm happy to answer questions. And the other thing, there was one final question that I did want to answer. Do we still have time for one more question, Tyler?
Yeah, yes, go ahead.
Okay, so I saw, how can I make the best out of my 30-second video? Because 30 seconds is very short. So what I've been trying to tell people is if you have a working prototype or a mock-up of a prototype, show that on the screen and then have a voiceover explaining exactly how it works. You might have to speed talk, but get that high-level overview out in that video. That way, when judges are looking at your page, the video is probably the first thing they'll see. So they'll get a high-level overview of what your project is about. And then they'll be able to then go and read the rest of your project submission and understand clearly the rest of the video, or I'm sorry, the rest of the project. So think of the video as an introduction to the rest of your page. You don't have to say absolutely everything in that 30 seconds, but just kind of use it as an introduction. And then the same thing with if you choose to use the attachments, think of that as an extension of your project page.
Yes, thanks, Katelyn. Great advice there. Great advice. I also want to recommend that you guys all update your team boards and share your journey throughout Hackathon weekend. NASA loves to see how participants have journeyed across the hackathon and their stories. So feel free to update your team board. It's a very, very good spot for fun and just giving an update on your progress.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point because after the hackathon, you can add updates there too. So if you continue to work on your project and you want judges to see, hey, we've continued to work on this, we're really excited. It's not part of your project page, but it is something that can be clicked on. And that way, anyone who's wondering whether it's a judge, whether it's just someone else that participated in the hackathon, they can see your progress as you move along.
Awesome. Thanks so much, everyone. And I'm sure that there are some other questions in the chat that we might not have touched on, but the good news is that everyone here will be available on Space Apps Chat. So again, you could go to chat.spaceappschallenge.org. Just as we wrap up, I want to see if there are any other final closing words from you all, Tyler, Alex, Katelyn, if there's anything you want to share with the participants.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I just want to encourage everyone to finish strong here. I mean, I know that some places are probably already getting ready to submit their projects, but there's still a ton of time left for a lot of our participants. So just use your last couple of hours wisely, be active in the chats, and do your best. Yeah.
Yeah, and my advice would be excited, be proud. You guys did this in 48 hours. That's amazing. A lot of you are not coders for as a profession. Some of you are. Some of you, this is your first hackathon. This is something you should be proud of. You should brag about this. This is an amazing accomplishment. Something that you should be able to talk about for years to come. So really spend these last few hours being motivated to finish this project. And when you're done, just take a step back and look at what you created. It's amazing the things that can come out of just a couple of days. And I have been completely blown away with what I've seen so far. So keep up the great work and good luck to everybody.
Alex, go
yeah.
for it.
And for me, I'm in chat rooms. This weekend, my main role in the event was recruiting. It's nice, I think. It's a new ability, and I'm here to help participants to find a team yet. And I think an important point here is in the chat room, ask about opportunities in teams and use this space to share your skills. And if you have any questions, talk to me.
Yeah, talk to all of us. We're here for all of you.
Yeah. Thank you so much, everyone. And thanks, Katelyn. Thanks, Alex. Thanks, Tyler, for this. But if anyone, again, as we mentioned throughout, wants to learn more or has questions, Space Apps Chat is available. There's also the resources page at spaceappschallenge.org/resources. And earlier we were talking about the global collaborators. So their information is all available when you log into the website to the dashboard on the right-hand side. But thanks again, everyone, for joining and for tuning in.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.